From a supergiant monster pulled out of the deep ocean to a shrimp that weighs over 300 pounds or 150 kilos, here are 10 of the biggest crustaceans ever caught that you won't believe. 10. Massive crayfish. Crayfish are kind of disturbing, no? Everyone gets a little creeped out by their strange bodies, which look like weird insects. Fortunately, they're all small, right? Right? That's what you thought. In Kentucky, a utility worker discovered a crayfish so big it could pass as a lobster. To give you an idea of just how big the crayfish was, also known as a crawdad, on average, a crayfish is about 3 inches or 7 centimeters long. There are some species that even grow to be 6 inches or 15 centimeters. This one was a whopping 10 inches or 25 centimeters from tail to claw. Even Western Kentucky University biology professor Steve Husky said he could hardly believe it when he first saw the thing. He thought someone was playing a trick on him. How did the massive crayfish get so massive? Nobody's really sure. It was pulled out of the water filtration system in the intake plant in Bowling Green by one of the workers. So far as we know, this is the biggest crayfish ever caught in Kentucky. Steve from the university even contacted the Illinois Natural History Survey, who happened to have a collection of over 90,000 different crustaceans. The crayfish proved to be bigger than anything in the collection. 9. Supergiant crustacean. 4 miles or 6 kilometers beneath the surface of the ocean off the coast of New Zealand, a giant crustacean unlike anything you've ever seen before was just discovered. It's being called a supergiant, and for good reason. The creature is a type of amphipod. In the wild, these things are normally just over half an inch or 1 centimeter long. The ones 4 miles or 6 kilometers deep were found to be over a foot long or 30 centimeters. That's over 10 times normal length. According to Alan Jameson from the University of Aberdeen, it was like finding a cockroach bigger than your foot. Obviously, if these creatures roamed around above ground, they would be some of the most disgusting things you could ever imagine encountering. And millions of years ago, they may very well have lived above the surface. But now, they sit at the bottom of the sea, waiting to feast on whatever floats their way. How did they find such amazing crustaceans? Scientists used special metal traps mounted with cameras to see what was on the bottom of the ocean floor. What they found was a whole army of these monsters. They apparently live at the bottom of ocean trenches and in the deepest parts of the world's oceans. They thrive in places where the pressure is 1,000 times greater than at sea level. What's really amazing is that nobody found these huge animals until just now. 8. Giant lobster claw. Off the coast of Wales, a marine biologist stumbled upon a monstrous lobster claw that could be proof of a literal giant lobster skulking around somewhere along the Welsh coastline. Of course, it probably died after losing its claw, but there could be others like it. The claw measured 8 inches or 20 centimeters. This is outstanding because when placed next to an ordinary lobster, the claw is bigger than the animal. The owner of the claw is probably around 3 feet, which is 3 times bigger than your average lobster. That's right, it would have been a fierce match for any human, especially if that human were diving into its territory. The discovery is made by Sean Crinan, who runs his own oyster farm in a small Welsh village. He accidentally pulled the lobster claw onto his vessel while fishing for oysters. In an email to Newsweek, Sean claimed he had never seen anything even remotely as large as the claw. Even though he didn't find the actual beast that it belonged to, there's no doubt that it was huge. He estimated the lobster to be at least 50 years old, though it could be significantly older. As you may already know, lobsters molt to grow older, and they never stop growing their entire lives. That means that ancient, vicious giant lobsters could very well live deep under the sea, where humans never see. 7. Tasmanian king crab. Back in 2012, there was a Tasmanian king crab named Claude, who was saved from certain death after being caught by a fisherman who was shocked by his outrageous size. Instead of just cooking the crab in the world's largest pot, the fisherman sold Claude to a British aquarium for $3,000. The crab had to make a 29-hour plane journey from Australia to England, where he was to be put on display. Claude weighs 15 pounds or 7 kilos and measures over a foot. Even more shocking is that he hasn't even fully grown yet. Once he finally stops growing, he'll probably be at least 30 pounds, which would make him a feast for a family-sized gathering, at least if that family likes to eat crabs. Put it this way, he's bigger than most people's dogs. As of right now, Claude is the biggest crab anywhere on display in the United Kingdom. He's so big that you could make 160 crab cakes out of him, although he'd probably prefer if you didn't. He's also 100 times larger than the shore crab normally found in the United Kingdom. He's on display at the Sea Life Centre in Dorset, housed inside of a specialised tank 10 feet or 3 metres tall and 6 feet or 2 metres wide. 6. The giant sea bug. There is a giant and pretty terrifying monster living in the waters of Indonesia. It's a type of crustacean known as an isopod, and a big one was recently pulled out of the water. These insect-like marine animals live at the bottom of the sea and grow to be as large as puppies. There are about 10,000 species of isopod living both on land and in the ocean. You're probably familiar with the ones in your garden, the little pill bugs that aren't even as big as your pinky fingernail. Well, the isopod pulled out of the waters of Indonesia is the newest and biggest species ever seen, and it measures 13 inches or 30 centimeters in length. That's way bigger than your hand, and probably about half the length of your forearm. Isopods are strange crustaceans. They have 2 pairs of antennae, a segmented body broken into 7 sections, way too many legs, and eyes buried in their face, making them look like monsters. This one was pulled up from a depth of 4,000 feet or 1,200 meters during the South Java Deep Sea Biodiversity Expedition. They're mostly bottom feeders, eating whatever they can find at the bottom of the ocean and scavenging carcasses whenever possible. Have you ever seen a disturbing-looking crustacean in your life? Where was it? What was it? What did you think of it? Were you scared? Tell me about it in the comments below. Then remember to subscribe to Epic Wildlife if you haven't already for more insane videos just like this one. 5. One-claw crayfish. Crayfish are violent fighters down below the surface of the ocean, and this one showed that he was a survivor against all odds. Yet another massive crayfish was recently discovered, this one from a rainforest in Tasmania. The giant crayfish was found with only one claw, located during a scientific mission. To date, it's the second biggest Tasmanian giant freshwater crayfish ever captured in the area. It may have been the biggest, but it only had one claw. Do you think it lost its other one in a fight with a rival? Hey, it's entirely possible. This type of crayfish has been a priority species for the last 20 years as its numbers have been dwindling. Activists are trying to protect a small area of 30,000 hectares where crayfish and other animals can live in peace without logging, but nothing has really been done by the government to make this happen. We all know something should be done, but bureaucracy moves slowly. The crayfish here are huge, though nobody could say why they continue to grow so big. Regardless, this one is absolutely fascinating. If only it could talk. 4. Grabzilla. In the English Channel, a very large crustacean has been captured. It's a crab, and it weighs nearly 9 pounds or 4 kilos and has claws so massive they could literally crush a person's wrist. It's a type of large edible brown crab, and it was captured by a local fisherman off the coast of Portsmouth. The crab has a crushing strength of around 90 pounds per square inch, or 540 kilopascals. In comparison, that's about 4 times stronger than a human's crushing power. We may have big brains and opposable thumbs, but we're not very good at crushing things with our hands. The crab has gotten pretty popular since its discovery. It even has a nickname, Popeye, because of its huge arms that make it look like a crab weightlifter. The fisherman who caught the crab donated it to the Blue Reef Aquarium, where it's been living ever since. Each claw is about the size of a fist. Nobody actually knows how long crustaceans can live for, but it's definitely more than a couple decades. Staff at the aquarium are hoping Popeye lives the rest of his life in easy retirement. I'm just hoping I don't have the misfortune to meet any of his weightlifting friends out in the wild. Wouldn't you be terrified to encounter one of these in the open ocean? 3. The largest lobster in the world. There's a place called Shediac in the Canadian province of New Brunswick that considers itself the lobster capital of the world. They even have a 35-foot or 11-meter high lobster sculpture that weighs over 15 tons to give themselves the title of having the largest lobster on the planet. But for all the drama, the biggest lobster ever caught didn't actually come from New Brunswick. Instead, it was from the neighboring province of Nova Scotia. On February 12, 1977, the largest lobster ever caught and recorded was pulled out of the water. The lobster weighed 44 pounds and 6 ounces, or 20 kilos, making it an absolute beast. And this absolute beast was estimated to be about 100 years old. But wait, because in 1926 there was a lobster captured in Maine, which happens to be slightly south of Nova Scotia, recorded at 51.5 pounds, or 24 kilos. That is extraordinary. It was 33 inches or 80 centimeters from nose to tail. The only reason this isn't considered a world record is that it happened way too long ago and nobody was ever able to officiate it. That being said, there's a good chance that these lobsters' measurements were exaggerated by the fishermen who caught them. After all, wouldn't you want to say you captured the biggest lobster ever? But in any case, these are the two most legitimate giant lobsters ever captured, and even though they came from two different countries, they really did come from the same part of the ocean. 2. The biggest spider crab. Recently, a giant spider crab was captured off the coast of Japan in Suruga Bay. The crab was caught in February and estimated to be roughly 40 years old. As you may already know, spider crabs are the biggest types of crabs in the world. They can even grow to be bigger than most people. This one, which was happily nicknamed Crab Kong, measured a claw span of 8 feet or 2.5 meters. That is the space between its two claws. When walking across the bottom of the ocean, this thing would look like one of those ambling alien ships from the War of the Worlds. It weighed 33 pounds or 15 kilos and could live for another 60 years. And while this wasn't the biggest spider crab ever, as some specimens have been captured that have a claw span over 12 feet or 4 meters, it's still nothing to sneeze at. In fact, the Weymouth Sea Life Centre in the UK was so impressed that they had the crab shipped from Japan all the way to England to put it on display. I'm not sure what it is about England buying all the biggest crustaceans in the world and putting them in their aquariums, but they've now got a pretty neat collection at this point. Number 1. 320-pound Canadian shrimp. You may have seen the story circulating about a couple of Canadians on the Atlantic coast who managed to catch a shrimp that weighed 320 pounds. They apparently captured the rhino-sized shrimp while fishing near the St. Lawrence River. The shrimp measured 9 feet or 3 meters and was apparently the biggest crustacean ever caught. As much as I hate to break it to you, dear viewer, this never actually happened, at least in the news story as it was written. There is no shrimp that scientists have yet discovered that even comes close to being that big. It would be easy to imagine a massive creature like this sitting below the surface, but the image was photoshopped in this case. The original photograph was that of two men holding a Wells catfish in Italy back in 2013. Somebody switched the catfish to a shrimp and uploaded the pictures online. It would be cool to think that there were monster shrimp like this living in our rivers, but nowadays there's no such thing. However, millions of years ago, it's possible that creatures like this did actually live on the ocean floor or in lakes around the world. Dinosaurs probably did feast on giant undersea creatures like this, but we're safe from them today. And I think that's for the best. After all, would you really want a 9-foot or 3-meter long shrimp nibbling on your toes every time you took a swim? Yeah, me neither. Have you ever been fishing? What's the biggest crustacean you've ever caught? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe and come back soon for another amazing video.